Welcome back to another episode of the Jackie Service Show. I am so excited for this one. This is a new friend of mine who I have recently met in an elite mastermind group that we're both a part of. And I am so excited to get to know you better and to get to know your story through the means of this podcast, because my goodness, this woman is not only a founder, but a CEO of Shoppable, which we're going to hear a lot more about. And I'm so excited to hear about your journey as a woman in tech and how you've built the empire that is Shoppable. So welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to dive into this one. We always start, as you guys know, with some rapid fire questions. It's just an easy way for everybody to get to know you a little bit better and for you to share a little bit more about philosophy and outlook and kind of who you are before we hop into your story.
Sounds great.
Amazing. Okay, where are you from originally?
Born and raised in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Okay, Midwest.
Midwest.
I have some good friends in the Midwest, and they'll send me, they don't live in the Midwest anymore, but they'll send me some funny sayings about just Midwestern sayings. So yeah, we have, I feel like Midwest is as close to Canadian as you can get.
That's true. Some people are often confused by my accent as it shifts with certain words. And they're like, are you Canadian or Southern? I can't quite put my finger on it.
I lived in the Southeast for a couple years when I was working for PepsiCo, and I would say "a" as a Canadian and "y'all" in the same sentence, and people were very confused. Yeah. They were like, "Are you Canadian or Southern?" And so, yeah, I've experienced something very similar.
Exactly.
I love it. And where is home now? Where are you living now?
New York.
Right in Manhattan. Whereabouts in New York?
Jersey City. Jersey City.
Oh my gosh, it's an incredible area.
Yeah, I love it. It's great and great place to be really close to the city. I take a 5-minute ferry into the city, and great for raising a family and still being close proximity.
Yeah, proximity is so important, especially when you're building businesses. I'm sure we'll get into that, but being able to have kind of a neighborhood feel and then being able to get into the city must be nice.
Yeah, exactly. We love it.
I love that. A book that you either go back to all the time and reread, or something that you love to recommend to other individuals who are growing and building companies?
One that comes to mind is Never Eat Alone, which is by Keith Ferrazzi. And I just think it's such, I read it many years ago. I think I read it in college. And I just think it's such an important book, especially whether you're a business owner or you're an entrepreneur, or you're, at the time I was in college, but then I started working in sales, and, so much is about your relationships and your network. So I would say that one.
Which is also probably core to why you live in New York City, because there's likely always somebody to have a meal with, and you probably don't eat alone often.
It's so true. It's so true. And
I love that.
Have a meal with, and every single night, multiple choices of networking events and things like that too.
Amazing. Amazing. And final one on the rapid question is, who's a mentor that has really unlocked perspective or helped you as you've grown and scaled your own business?
I mean, there's so many. I mean, I have to say what's one person that's top of mind for me, I would say, is Alexandra Wilkes Wilson. She's one of the co-founders of Gilt Group. She founded Glam Squad. She's at Clarity Capital now. She's, serial entrepreneur. And I met her pretty much right when I moved to New York, and tracked her down because I wanted to be in her vicinity. And anyway, she's helped me quite a bit at all stages of the business and different challenges, and making introductions to key brands and retailers that I needed to get Shoppable to the next stage. So she comes to mind for sure. And then the other one I would add would be Dee Solomon, who is a more on the publishing and media side of things, but also really opened key doors for me early on and provided just valuable feedback in crafting the offering and to the tune of it, the exact publisher speak that she would say, don't say it that way. You have to say it this way, or they're going to immediately, dismiss what you're saying if you don't use their lingo. So help me
Mm,
get in with
wow.
that crowd too, which I would have had no idea.
That's potent though. If you think about what you just said, and what I heard you say is these two individuals who are mentors of yours, one of the core that was at both of them is they both opened doors for you. They both helped you continue to step into the next level. And that's been true for me. And when I think about back to the mentors that have been really influential in my life, they supported me and stood beside me, but they were also the first to say my name in a room I wasn't in,
Right.
or to make an introduction that frankly they didn't need to make.
Yeah.
And just out of kind of love, kindness, respect for what I was doing. And I'm sensing the same thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's key, and that those introductions can really make your business. And so
100%.
so,
Which is why you should never eat alone, because if you have connections and relationships, that's what we're all doing. We're in the
absolutely.
people business in multiple ways,
Yeah,
inclusive of building relationships.
so true.
I love that. Okay, let's hear about the story of Shoppable. So I've done my research, I've taken a look, but for the listeners, I'd love them to get a sense of how did we go from Wisconsin Midwest girl to heart of the city, New York, and what have been all the twists and turns along the way to go from ideation to a reputable brand that's serving so many massive Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah. So for the start of it, I mean, really, so from, I guess, rewinding to Wisconsin, I stayed there through high school, and then after I graduated, I already had known for many years that I really wanted to get into business, and I didn't know exactly how. I thought I wanted to start a company, but I knew I wanted to get into business. And as nice as the town of La Crosse, Wisconsin is, it just wasn't the metropolis of business opportunities, and it didn't feel like the right place for me to stay. So I wanted to go to a larger city. And also the cold of Wisconsin had me thinking California might be the best place to go. So I ended up going to school in San Francisco, lived out there, went to school, and ended up, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I ended up not feeling super challenged at the school I was in. So I ended up applying to the London School of Economics and moving to London, which I did for for about a year. And then I couldn't get a visa to stay. So I ended up moving back to San Francisco. I tried to stay in London, and was hoping to work at Google. I was trying to interview with them in their UK office, and it didn't end up working. But I was very interested in tech. So what I was, as I moved back to San Francisco, I finished up my last semester, and I was interning at this tech company that was called military.com. And found it like literally on like a job board at the school, just kind of ended up there because I just moved back from London. And I had heard that they had just gone through an acquisition recently. So I'm like, okay, I want to talk to this founder and just understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And in talking, I sent him an email, and I'm like, this guy's probably not going to even read my email, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sent him an email and just said, can I, grab a coffee with you, or just chat with you, at some point in my future. Like, I'm an intern at your company, but at some point in my future, I want to start a company. So I ended up going and talking to him. And he said, if you're not ready to start a company, because I was graduating in a couple of months, he's like, if you're not ready to start a company yet, why don't you come and work for me? Because I'm starting a new company and I'd love for you to be on my founding team. I suppose I skipped a step, which is he then said, why don't you, he's like, sign this NDA. If you're at all interested, sign this NDA. I'm going to give you our pitch deck, take a look at it, and you let me know what you think. And then he invited me to a meeting with his other three co-founders. I mean, I was, the most junior person in the company. The other three people were all MBAs, execs.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I need to show up to this meeting with the great questions and comments, and want to impress everybody as the most junior person. So anyway, I did that, and then ended up joining that startup, which led me to the opportunity to be able to really learn firsthand from
Mhm.
Chris Michael, who's the serial entrepreneur. And when he started a second company, and I knew, okay, he had already done this before, and he was going to do it again. And I was joining when it was literally a PowerPoint. So he was going out to raise money. It was very much the beginning. And it was such a great experience for me to kind of go through those early days, and even the medium days, all the way through till when that company was acquired, and have that experience as an entrepreneur before I started it on my own. So that's kind of the background before I ended up taking my own entrepreneurial leap. But that's what led me up to just before I started the business.
I love that. It's like getting a front row seat into how a founder thinks. What are the questions they're asking? What are the, having been through, it sounds like you went from PowerPoint to acquisition and seeing what that cycle looks like in terms of when we get investments or fundraising, where do we put that money first? How do we build this to ideation? When are we, I work with a lot of founders around like when do we build team and when do we scale team? At what stage in the cycle do we do that? And so I'll go in and support them in that thinking as kind of one aspect of all the aspects of founders thinking about. There's so many different areas that they're thinking about. I'm
Yeah.
curious for you, through that experience, was there one or a couple things that really stood out that you have such gratitude for? Because then when you did it yourself, they were either lessons of like, hey, I would never do that, and I'm not going to make that same mistake. Or I'm so glad I saw that because now I can build on the same foundation. Were there a few things that stick out?
Yeah, absolutely. So for for me, it was on just these huge challenges, and again, I was the most junior person at the company when it first started. I think we were five people, and so I was very green in my experience. But we came back from a weekend Monday morning and suddenly had a fraud problem, and just like a massive fraud problem. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, something's, and I was looking in our systems and going through it. I'm like, something's really suspicious. And then we realized it's fraud. Anyway, things started escalating really quickly. And from where I was sitting, I'm like, is this the end? This seems like a really big problem. Is this whole company over? Is this, something we can't come back from? Because we were sending all this fraud unintentionally to our clients. And anyway, so we got everybody into a room. We got around around a boardroom table, looked into the problem, figured out the different issues, and then we worked on a solution. And it was getting the right people around the table to have the right conversation. And what I really learned from that is, and people say this to me now all the time, is they're like, nothing seems to rock you. They're like, there could be something really stressful going on, and people will say like, I don't know how you're handling it without like even seeing like anything's going on at all. And so I think that was a key takeaway for me, is just getting the right people around the table and making sure that you don't focus too much on the problem. You need to identify the problem, and so that you can then shift your focus to the solution. And how do we move forward from here? How do we, in that case, make good to our clients? How do we be upfront with them? Look, this happened. We're really sorry. We don't want to put it on them. How do we deal with that? And then how do we build so it doesn't happen again? And what we ended up building in that particular instance, we built this whole fraud prevention system that ended up being one of the main reasons that the business was acquired later. So this
Wow.
problem became essentially one of the key things for the acquisition later.
Oh, I love that. And I also love, gosh, I'm sure as a founder, you've experienced this. there's enough hiccups every day that can feel like, oh gosh, is this the end? If you allow your brain to go there from a cycling standpoint. And that core lesson of let's just figure out who the right people are to put around this table so we can find the solution. My gosh, what a gift that is. And not just to yourself, but also to your team to witness that and to see that, hey, we can figure everything out here if we just get the right minds around the table and collaboratively work together.
Exactly.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, now the story of Shoppable. So is this an idea you have? Is this a need you see in the market? Like, where did it even come from? Where did it go from ideation to today?
Yeah, so with Shoppable, I started it because of a personal frustration. And it's a problem that 99% of people have had, which is essentially you come across a great product, you want to purchase it, but you can't. It's not shoppable, it's not buyable. So many people will just give up right then and there if they see something and they can't buy it. They're like, forget it. There's too much friction. I'm not going to waste my time. But there's a portion of us that will then go into Google, or Amazon, try to describe the product, or you try to guess who makes it, click around to try to track it down. And that's what I was trying to do, because we had just sold this last startup and I had moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with no roommate for the very first time, which, is the first time I had to make my apartment feel like a real home and kind of figure out some idea of interior design. I had no clue, I felt like, at that point. And anyway, so I was going on these different websites and I'd find inspirational images where like, okay, that's great. I want my house to look like that. And of course I had to buy everything. So I'm going back and forth. I'm like, there's this whole experience sucks. At one point I was sitting there with my credit card by my keyboard, trying to buy, I don't know if it was a sofa or curtains or what it was. And I'm like, I cannot find this anywhere. And I'm like, this product is sitting in some retailer's warehouse somewhere. They're paying for it. And this magazine's website that I was on, I'm like, and they spent a lot of money with their photography and getting these beautiful demand generating content, but they're not getting any money from this. And I'm also not getting the product. So I'm like, this is a situation where all three parties are losing. And all three parties could win, but I'm like, then I kind of did that entrepreneurial thing. I was just like, so why are we all losing and what's the problem here? Like, there has to be some technology that basically can bring retailer products to publishers and to content sites and be able to integrate them in directly so that they may be shoppable. And there wasn't. And I went down the rabbit hole and I'm like, this seems crazy, that doesn't exist. And I was, first looking at it from a consumer standpoint and then just curious as kind of, someone working in technology at that point, and ended up just doing a ton of research and being like, wow, if this doesn't exist, this seems like it can be a really, really big idea. And, can I essentially go out and create partnerships with all of the major retailers and brands to integrate their catalog, digitally speaking. So I have this massive catalog of products, and then I can create a single universal checkout that connects into their systems, and then create technology that enables the shoppable layer across any form of digital content. And that's what I, really what I did at Shoppable. And, the initial product has evolved as all, tech products do over time. So when I first launched it, I will say that I initially launched it as a destination, and I thought we could have one checkout, one product catalog, but all on one site, and then all of the other sites would redirect their links to this one site. And it would be better from what they currently have, because they'd have to be linking to multiple different retailers. But after getting a friend of mine introduced me to, actually, I probably shouldn't say the publisher's name, but let's just say one of the 2 largest publishers in the country. A friend of mine got me in the door with them, and they said, first of all, you've created the holy grail of content and commerce. It's like, thank you. Great to hear that. We're on the right track. So early client, potential customer feedback was good. But then the editor-in-chief of this magazine said, but she's like, I'm fine sending you the traffic for the checkouts and stuff there, but she's like, really what we want is to license your technology and put it on our site.
Mm.
Because, we're creating we're trying to get all of our traffic to our site. They're also monetizing through ads, so they want to drive impressions. They're like, we really don't want to send traffic away from the website at all if we can help it. So they said, can we license this technology? And if not, that's fine, we'll send you the links, but eventually we just want you to know that that's the direction we'd want to go. So I said, I have paused and I'm thinking, okay, that's not exactly what my business is, but it was still really early days. So I'm getting that customer feedback, which, is so critical. So I said, give me 30 days and I'll get back to you, because I'm like, I needed to me, it felt like a critical point. And it was, spoiler alert, to decide, am I going to, change my focus from being this destination site where really I would have had to be focusing on driving consumers to the site,
Mm-hmm.
or changing the business to be B2B and then licensing and distributing the technology out everywhere else. So I took 30 days, ran different metrics, talked to some other publishers, other potential customers, talked to retailers and brands, and anyway, ended up making that shift to then focus on building it as a SaaS business so that we can license out the technology and scale it externally versus from a destination site. And I'm so glad that I did it, because it just solves so many problems that we weren't even aware of at the time, honestly, when I was first starting it.
Isn't like just the fact that that feedback gave you a chance to pause. And once again, it sounds like probably in that 30 days, you pulled together the minds that needed to think through it of like, hey, if we were to do this, what would have to look like, and what would have to change, and how would we have to evolve? I mean, that can be really difficult as an entrepreneur who has this idea in mind, and it almost becomes like, you know, a child of like, hey, this is something I'm birthing into the world, and I'm so fixated on this one way. But then we go out into the world and we get that feedback. And I just appreciate the fact that once again, you're taking that pause moment to likely bring around the greatest minds that you have to be able to think through what's possible if this is a kind of pivot in direction that we start going down.
Yep, absolutely.
I love this. So who does Shoppable serve today? Like, give us maybe a real life example of who's coming to you to license the tech to then enhance the experience of their consumer.
Yeah, so we license the technology to publishers, we license it to consumer packaged good companies that are not direct to consumer brands. So for example, we power Revlon.com. So, Revlon's a brand that probably all of your listeners have heard of before. They sell in Walmart, Target, Walgreens, Rite Aids, CVS, many others. But they don't have a direct to consumer business, and they don't want to create a channel conflict. So they use Shoppable's technology to embed a shoppable experience on their site in the ads, and then our checkout allows them to sell, really it's their own branded products, but they're selling them through these preferred retailers by using Shoppable's checkout. So by moving their checkout essentially to Revlon properties. So it lets them have this fully branded Revlon experience, to the point where we call it D2C light, because it is like a direct to consumer experience, except for the fact that they are not fulfilling the products, and they don't have to be the merchant of record. So that's one example. But we also work with publishers that want to make their ads shoppable or create shoppable content. We do a lot of shoppable gift guides. So this time of year, a lot of people are working on putting together gift guides, whether they're a creator working with the brands or they're on the publishing side. That they'll use a new product we have called Instant Shop that we launched last year. And that lets anyone really curate the products that they want. It lets them brand the whole experience, publish it, and start earning commissions, or they can set up advertiser kind of placement fees, but on everything that they sell from their shop, without any engineers, which is really cool.
Super cool. I love that. Thank you for sharing. And you're right. We were talking about this off camera that, Christmas in July is real when you are in marketing and you are building, you're already thinking about the holiday season and starting to build out gift guides and different catalogs. And it's so timely that you're launching this to help a lot of your partners and likely prospect partners to bring this fully to life, experience, like from an experience standpoint as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it just makes, it's funny because, going back to the story, our very first customer that we ended up launching with, it was not the company that I was talking to. They ended up like just moving too slow, which is another kind of nugget for anyone in the really early days. Don't rely on one potential launch partner because you never know what's going to happen. But our real launch partner ended up being the Wall Street Journal, and they launched a gift guide. And this was before we had this instant shop technology. So they used kind of our literally our original technology and created a luxury gift guide for their website. And it was the first time that they were able to have a single checkout on their website, even though they had curated products from, like, they were very high-end products from Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue, and then very nice coffee table books, I think from Barnes and Noble, and stuff like that. But it was literally initially for the holidays was our first launch.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And great lesson as well to not put all of your eggs in one basket, right? When we're coming to launch season. And I can imagine that when we have a big idea and there's maybe a big name that is interested in what we're doing, it can be very difficult to not get fixated on that big name. Was that a lesson learned for you, or did you actually end up having multiple brands around launch?
It was a lesson learned
Okay.
for sure. I mean, we we're so grateful for the Wall Street Journal and taking a chance on us with our launch. We had two other, I mentioned kind of this mentor of mine helped open a lot of these doors early on. So we had two other large publishers that both were like, we're going to be your launch partner. We really want to be first. It's so important to us to be first and be seen as innovative and, and those kinds of things. And they were both really, I mean, Wall Street Journal is huge too, but these were also really big names. So I think, I made the mistake of, one, just maybe it was just a little naive. If someone says they're going to do something, I thought they were going to do it. And also just did not understand how slow big companies really move. And so anyway, so I think I probably lost a good 6 months or so with one of them, because I kept thinking that, okay, they're almost there, they're almost ready. And then I'm waiting, and I'm, these are new relationships that I'm trying to kind of manage at the same time. And anyway, we ended up just losing. I mean, 6 months is an enormous amount of time in the days. So then I started realizing, okay, I'm not going to guarantee anyone being the launch partner, and I don't necessarily need to have one. So let me try to go after multiple. And that strategy ended up working. And, we launched with a paying customer, which is great.
And a paying customer with a name that likely also provided credibility to open up more doors.
Yeah, absolutely. And the another kind of key lesson with that too is exactly the big name like that is getting them, they worked together with us as a partner to help onboard some of our early retailer relationships. So we had at Shoppable at the time, I think we maybe had 10 retailers or something. Now we have hundreds, and about 1,000 maybe.
Wow.
But we had a very small list at that point in time. So we created this co-branded sheet that explained what we did. And then they actually went out to, really it was their advertiser relationships, and helped bring on some of our early retail partners by saying, look, we're launching this gift guide. Our tech provider is Shoppable. If you want to be included in it, you need to be on their platform. Here's how you do it. Meet Heather, and anyway, so it was really a jump start to have that type of partner that can make those introductions, especially when you're in a marketplace and you have that chicken and egg problem too.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I love hearing the story of Shoppable. Give us a little bit of context. So how many years has Shoppable been around for? I mean, you just shared we went from, maybe 10 to a list of 1,000. Like, what are some of the big milestones that you've been really proud of as a founder that Shoppable has lived through?
Ooh, yeah, so we've been around for 12 years.
It's
And
incredible.
yeah, and I would say, I mean, when the early ones, I started the business in San Francisco and then ended up moving it to New York after I had a very successful business trip to New York. Decided on my second day here, I'm like, I need to be based in this city. So I would say kind of making that shift to New York was an early milestone. And for that, just to pause on that, it was about making the decision that the company needed to be where the industries were that we needed to work with. And it seemed at the time, I mean, the New York tech scene now is massive, but 12 years ago it was not. It was very small. It was a whole Silicon Alley thing, not that big at all. A couple of companies like Foursquare and Gilt Group and whatnot, but not a lot. And anyway, it seemed very counterintuitive to be in the Bay Area with a tech company and say, oh, I'm going to move to New York. But advice that I've given other founders, and some of my investors have occasionally had me talk to founders that they're potentially going to invest in about where their business should be located, because at Shoppable, we work with these key New York industries: publishing, advertising, even, now finance, fintech, the agencies, the consumer packaged good companies, all primarily New York, and the ones that are not New York based come through New York pretty frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't in San Francisco. And we also were not getting the credibility on phone calls, being when people would ask, where are you based? And I'd say San Francisco. I'd hear the tone of their voice shift. And I'm sure if we weren't doing Zoom calls 12 years ago, but I'm sure if we were, I'd see body language shifting as well. But I could tell him, like, this isn't, it shouldn't be based here. So I ended up moving it to New York. So that, and I really don't think we would be around today had I stayed in San Francisco, because I don't think we would have gotten the early partnerships that we needed to get off the ground.
Wow.
So I think that ended up being a really, really important decision for us. So it was only, two people at the time. So it wasn't like we were moving, massive team, but it was still very meaningful. So I would say that was one of the pivotal moments. Obviously, making the decision to switch to B2B was a huge moment for us. A launch with the Wall Street Journal, a huge moment for us. And I would say, when we first hit 100 million products in the catalog, that kind of blew my mind. Like, is that number right? I think was my reaction.
The thought of having one couch in a catalog that was in a warehouse somewhere that I couldn't get access to is now 100. You say 100,000?
100 million.
Oh my gosh. Is now 100 million products that
Well,
somebody who's sitting on that couch has access to with their credit card.
yes. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy. And I mean, and then now today we just hit 400 million. So
Over here clapping for you. That's amazing.
Thank you. So it's still growing. I mean, and it still kind of blows my mind, because there's still, like, we're still talking to brands and merchants that we're not working with yet. And even in this 400 million, we're like, okay, you need to join. You need to get your products in here so we can make them shoppable. But yeah, those were key milestones. As well, I would say another one that I thought was pretty interesting, and I think, entrepreneurs kind of dream of, but it was the first time that a company had reached out with interest in acquisition, and it was pretty early on, and it kind of stopped me because I wasn't expecting it at that point in time. And I thought, oh, I've created enough value because you build, like, as an entrepreneur, we build things from nothing. So you're literally day one, you have absolutely nothing. So when this CEO of this company reached out and expressed interest in acquisition, it like really made me pause, because I'm like, I've created enough value that someone's interested in buying it.
Wow.
And it just like, it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, okay, that's something. I wasn't ready to sell, but it was really meaningful to be like, okay, that is a milestone that, you really kind of dream of as an entrepreneur, is just creating, you dream of that launch and bringing it to the
Mhm.
market. Then you dream about like, okay, is it something that's valuable to even bigger companies around you too? And I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty exciting too.
Mm. Love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I love the milestones and just hearing about some of these big unlocks that have happened over the 12 years, and 12 years in itself to continue to grow and expand and go from this ideation of cannot buy this couch for my 1-bedroom apartment to 400 million products on your site is just incredible. I love hearing that story and that, just the massive amount of success that you've had.
Thank you so
I I'm curious, at this stage, 12 years in, is there anything that keeps you up at night? Are there any challenges you as founder, CEO, woman in tech, any challenges that are constantly there for you that you're still working through?
That's a great question. I mean, the answer is yes. I would say it, it varies depending upon the night. Right.
Fair, very fair.
Depending upon
Says
what
the two moms here that have kids home and we're locking ourselves in our office to get things done.
exactly. Yeah, so I would say it depends on the time, but I mean, for sometimes it's about and I think this is really relevant for this conversation too. Sometimes it's about people, and it's about you know um it's important to me to always do right by our people, and try to since the beginning, every single person we've hired has been so important, and I take so much responsibility in making that hire, and for that individual. And every time we added a new person to the team, it was a big deal. um and keeping um helping people get to the next stage of their career, and things like that, I think is something that I want to I will sometimes like take up a lot of space in my head about, okay, how do we you know help this person get to what their goals are, and and how do we solve this other challenge, and having the right talent for the different challenges that you're facing at the time, and things like that, I feel like can be something that is just spinning in the back of my head sometimes, and just trying to always do you have to do what's right for your business, and do right for each of the individuals too. And I think that's something that one of the first things that come to mind.
Yeah, it's a balancing act always when it comes to humans. And at the end of the day, one of the things that Dan Martell, who's the program that Heather and I met in, is the coach. He talks a lot about having dreams big enough that your employees' dreams can be a part of. And so constantly up leveling your level of thinking as you bring in more skilled expertise, executive level hires has been something that's been really interesting for me to just continue to drive forward. So I'm working through that one as well as I start to think through, building the next level of my organization as well. I'm curious for you, if you think about team today, is your team primarily internal? Do you have a lot of contractors and people that support you? What does the dynamic of your team look like? And how has hiring the right humans unlocked sustainability for you?
Mm. We're primarily in-house, New York based. But we have a handful of contractors. I would say you know hiring is tough. Hiring is really tough. I think we've made some great hires. I think we've also made some mistakes, and learned from that process. But especially having a great executive team, I think is critical. One new addition that I added recently, kind of through advice from our mutual coach here, is adding an assistant. And,
Mhm.
and I don't know, I think different entrepreneurs have blocks around that. And I kind of have a block around it where I feel like, do I need an assistant? And I also, do I have enough for them to do? And is it just easier for me to just do it versus explain and then hand it off to someone else? So I think that's kind of something that I'm literally working on now. I have a new assistant that joined about 3 weeks ago. So working on getting
Mm.
her up to speed, but I'm excited about having that position now. And I've kind of wrapped my brain around, okay, I need to offload these things and then I can be, a better CEO. And
Mhm.
I can be a better, CEO to my team. I can be a better CEO to our customers, to our partners, and put my time to better use than some of the other things that I should really be handing off to an admin. So that's just something that I'm really excited about right now as far as a key hire.
Yeah, that was a big unlock for me as well. And I had had an executive assistant in-house. And after reading Dan's book, Buy Back Your Time, we're going to give a little love and a shout out to him. Um, it helped me understand how to set that individual up for success, because I had all these one-off things versus ownership of, hey,
Yeah.
you own the calendar. Hey, you own the email, and this is your lane, and you need to find the expertise in it. And this is truly like your ownership. And as soon as I was able to create that, and I remember this unlock moment that happened with my executive assistant, I said, you're the protector of my time. Really,
Yes.
at the core of it, if you think about how important your role is, you're the protector of my time. People are coming through you to get access to me, and you're that filter. As soon as that clicked for her and she realized, she wasn't just a taskmaster, but she actually had a really large stake in the business of how we were going to operate, I just saw her unleash, and like this next level version of her came out as well. So I'm excited for you as you onboard your assistant and leverage that philosophy of really creating ownership and letting go of the things that are no longer needed on the plate of being a CEO of a very successful company.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I mean, I would say I initially saw some huge wins when I was just traveling for the last couple of weeks, and she happened to onboard about 3 or 4 days before I left. So one of the things that I asked her to do was to go through all of our the recent conversations I'd had with potential customers, and I asked her to follow up with all of them and see if she could book a meeting for me to touch base with them when I returned to the office. And it was amazing seeing all these emails go out to all these people I've been talking to saying, I'm following up for my CEO, Heather, booking a time for you. And when I came back to the office, I sat down and had, a calendar booked with all these meetings of people that I needed to have that touch base with and keep moving the business forward. And it was just, it was kind of a light bulb moment where I'm like, oh, if I didn't have this assistant, I'd be coming back. And then 2 weeks later, I'd be reaching out to these people to follow up or to get back to their emails. And she's jumping in on all of that stuff for me saying, oh, let me help you book this. And it just saved so much time already that it's a huge unlock, and I'm so glad that I did it.
Mm. Last question here. For multiple people that are tuning in, I know a lot of founders and CEOs of companies love listening to other founder stories. When you think about your role as CEO, now that you've surrounded yourself with executive team, with an admin that's just getting onboarded, what do you see your role is? Where do you think your zone of genius is so that you can continue to grow and scale the company at the rate that you want to do that in?
Ooh, I think it's about setting the vision and aligning the team to that vision and the projects back from that vision. So, so many, people always at any company, they want to know, where's the company going? What's next? What are we working towards? What are our goals? And it's the CEO's job to set all of those up and get the team excited about those goals and everybody aligned to it. Because when you don't, people can be working and doing, being task masters, as you put it earlier, but they don't really understand. If they don't understand the big picture, they might be missing context, and they might be coding things in a way that doesn't make sense, or they might be communicating, if they're the marketing team, in a way that doesn't really make sense, or is, the squiggly line way to get to someplace versus the direct line, if they had clear communication and clear direction. So I think that's really important. And one of the ways that I tried to communicate that with my team is doing quarterly, basically we do a quarterly offsite or a quarterly kickoff, and we all align across all parts of the business, talk about where we're going. I always kick it off with CEO update and vision, and then we work into all the different parts and how we're doing, and then we look forward with, this is where we're going, so that each person, if you ask them, what are we working towards, they should all know.
That's it. Everyone understands what the vision is, rowing the boat in the same direction. And it helps anchor, right? It helps anchor the decision-making day to day to say like, hey, is this allowing us to move towards this vision and or not? Right. Heather, I could keep talking to you for hours. I think that this is just the beginning of one, a beautiful relationship, but two, hopefully an opportunity to have you come back onto the show later on and share more about the successes of Shoppable. And if you are listening in and you have specific questions, let us know. I'll make sure to hold them for a 2.0 interview when Heather comes back. Heather, where can people reach you? What's the best way for them to find you personally and or to learn more about Shoppable?
So I would say about.shoppable.com, or you can just go to shoppable.com. Best way to learn about Shoppable. You can even book a demo with me directly there. And then I am I would say most active on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Heather Udo.
Fabulous. We will link everything up at the show notes, so you don't have to go far. You can just take a look there and give Heather a follow. Let her know what stood out to you in the interview today. Heather, beyond grateful for your time and dedication. I love hearing how ideas and an experience that you had can lead to a massively successful organization 12 years later. So major congratulations, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me again.
All right, guys, we'll see you again on the Jackie Service Show.